Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Chelsea Lake. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm a member of the events team at Politics and Prose, and I'd like to welcome you to PNP Live. Thank you for joining us in this virtual format in which we strive to bring you the authors we all love to our Politics and Prose community. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. At any point during the event, you can click on the link that I'll be dropping in the chat to purchase Three Wise Men on the Politics and Prose website. You can also ask a question by clicking on the Q&A feature, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to get to everybody's questions, but I apologize in advance if we don't have time to address yours. We are delighted to offer closed captioning for this event via Zoom's auto captioning service. To access captions, click on the live transcript option at the bottom of your screen. Finally, thank you again for being with us here tonight. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Sergeant Beau Wise served on active duty in the Marine Corps from 2008 to 2016 with the 1st Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment, 3rd Marine Division. He is the only known American service member to receive the Department of Defense's sole survivor designation as a result of the 17-plus year war in Afghanistan. Three Wise Men is his first book. Tom Sileo is an author, senior editor of The Stream, and recipient of the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation's 2016 General Oliver P. Smith Award for Distinguished Reporting. Tom has written several books, including 8 Seconds of Courage and Brothers Forever. Please join me in welcoming them both to PNP Live. Gentlemen.
Hi there.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Everybody,
welcome.
My name's Tom Sileo, and I'm the co-author of Three Wise Men with Sergeant Beau Wise. We're really pleased that you're able to join us tonight, especially so close to Memorial Day, which I think is very much a theme of this book. In fact, Beau's family story, I think, really can help define the meaning of Memorial Day. So, Beau, first of all, I know you're just as grateful as I am for the folks that are joining us, and thank you to Politics and Prose. But when we talk about Memorial Day, what does Memorial Day mean to you and your family?
Well, I think at one point in time, it was, for the most part, a 3-day holiday for, when we were younger and a bit more naive. But it means a lot more. And I tell myself all the time, now it bears a little bit heavier weight, but I can tell myself in advance that, and I think everyone who's suffered, severe grief, trauma can relate. It's just a day, and then the day gets here, and then it's something a lot bigger and it's a lot heavier. So, for us just to keep the veterans and the service members and those that have paid the highest sacrifice, and just keeping them and their family members in their prayers. So for Gold Star Memories, especially bears a heavy meaning to me personally.
Absolutely. For those who might not be familiar with the story behind our book, Three Wise Men, Beau was a United States Marine until 2016. He has the distinction, but the tragic distinction of being the only U.S. service member to receive the sole survivor designation from the Pentagon. And what that means is Beau lost 2 brothers in Afghanistan. And this was the only time this happened as a result directly of that conflict. And his oldest brother's name was Jeremy. He was a Navy SEAL and then a CIA contractor. And his middle brother's name was Ben, who was an Army infantry soldier and then a Green Beret. So, Beau, we want to help the audience understand more about who your brothers were. Obviously extraordinary men and extraordinary American heroes. You grew up in rural Arkansas together. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
So I was the youngest of 4 children, actually. Our sister Heather is still there in South Arkansas with my mother. But I was the youngest from Jeremy, about 10 years apart, and 8 and 6. And between Heather and Ben and then myself. They always used to jokingly say that you were a trip to Hawaii. Yeah, but anywho, Our childhood was very wholesome upbringing, and in rural South Arkansas. We grew up in the country for the most part, and Jeremy was the big and loud and often mischievous of the four of us, and typically got everyone into trouble, or he never could go by himself. He needed company. So and Ben, a little bit more quieter, stereotypical middle brother, and Heather, she would join us occasionally, but she was always the good one that we knew was going to be valedictorian, and I was tag along. Everybody, all the siblings were so much bigger and older and kind of larger than life, so I just kind of looked up to all of them growing up.
Absolutely. So people can read more about the very rich military history that your family had before all three of you decided to join. But speaking of joining the military, your middle brother, Ben, was actually the first of the three brothers to join. And at the time, your oldest brother, Jeremy, wasn't too happy about that.
Jeremy pinned him against the wall. And there might have been some softening blows there.
And why was that?
Well, so for Jeremy, even, high school, college, med school, like the entire period of his education, up until med school, he had always aspired to Navy SEALs. He always talked about going to BUDS, and he would say it often, like, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. Like, I know I can do it. I've got to do it. And, there was a prolonged time where, one, he was battling shin splints, and he was worried about going to BUDS, getting injured, and not having control over his career. But for Ben, it wasn't so deliberate. I think it wasn't so much about the job, or being a Ranger or a Green Beret, or as it was just the opportunity to serve. And this is before 9/11. So when Ben just comes home and he's like, I enlisted, and it was just World War III between the two of them. And it was because I think Jeremy thought that he hadn't planned, he hadn't really prepped, or done his homework on what's the best community and the best fit for me, why, so on and so forth. So it wasn't mad that he enlisted. It was mad that he enlisted in Jeremy's mind, not very deliberately, very incidentally. And I think that was the reason.
So this was before 9/11,
Yeah.
and Ben wound up going to Iraq in 2003, 2004. So, but rewinding just a little bit to 9/11. I know you were still in high school at the time, but your brother, Jeremy, your oldest brother, who, as you said, aspired to be a Navy SEAL, was actually in medical school and nearly finished, as we talked about in the book. Why do you think he decided to leave medical school and a promising career as a doctor to go to perhaps the hardest training known to man?
Well, he said all the time that 9/11 was not the reason that he went. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. After that, it was like, okay, it's, now we need SEALs more than ever. And it was just the tipping point, if you will.
Uh-huh.
So I think that was one of the reasons, maybe all he needed was just that little push, which was nothing more than one finger pressure. And that was all it took from that point on. And he never looked back.
There was something he said to you when you asked him, hey, Jeremy, you're almost done with medical school.
Yeah.
Why? What did he say?
So one of the things that he said, look, the people in towers couldn't fight back. I can. But what stuck with me, and when I knew that there was no way that we were going to talk him out of that, and we were just trying to think of, and when he said that, and then he followed up with, 20 years from now, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say one of two things. Either I could have been a doctor, I could have been a Navy SEAL. I can't live with the latter. And so that was the moment where we were like, okay, he's made up his mind and we're not talking him out of it.
All right. As for you, so, they were starting to train and deploy and be a huge part of the US-led war on terror. what motivated you to serve in the Marine Corps and to volunteer to serve? Was it your brothers? Was it your family's history? Was it a combination
A
of both?
combination of it. It was that, but I mean, it was jealousy living through them. I mean, when Ben enlisted, it was real. I was like, man, this is, I have, you know, an Army grunt brother. You know, I'm a service member as an immediate family member. And then it was, and it became more real when Jeremy goes to Buds and passes, and then Ben goes to Green Beret selection and graduates. And I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm in college, and I was never jealous of the college stories, but I was jealous of the military stories and thought, all right. So I sat down with Ben and Jeremy both, and I actually moved out to Virginia Beach and shed some weight, started getting in shape. And as Jeremy would say, you know, enlist deliberately. And so we did our research and found, like, you know, what I wanted to do. And for me, Marine Corps infantry seemed to be a pretty good fit. And I think they were right. I fell in love with it.
Are we, I want to make sure everyone can hear us. Yeah, okay. All right, I think we're okay. Sorry about that, folks. Just making sure we're okay technically here. So now let's fast forward to 2009, December of 2009. Your brother, by this point, your oldest brother, Jeremy, had transitioned from Navy SEAL military service to a contracting role with the CIA, even though you were not aware of that at the time in 2009, specifically. December 30th, 2009, where were you and what happened that day?
So Jeremy had finished 3 deployments to Baghdad with the Navy SEALs. This was his first as a contractor with the CIA. And he was part of the GRS community. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was on my first deployment in Helmand province, almost as far south as you can go as far as Afghanistan is concerned.
Uh-huh.
And this is maybe a few weeks or a month before the initial invasion. And I was, you know, we were getting ready to go. We were outside of our FOB, and we were at our forward operating base, and we were with a different unit, and we were getting ready to do a joint operation and kick butt and take names first, basically was the plan. And then in the middle of the night, the operation gets canceled, and none of us, you know, really knew anything about why. And the only thing the platoon commander told us was, hey, you know, battalion's got something else for us. We're going to go back south down to battalion FOB Geronimo. So we get to Geronimo, and then my platoon commander gets out of his vehicle, skips the whole convoy, walks up to me and says, hey, Wise, can you hop out of the turret for a second? I got something for you. And it was like, okay. And he said, what am I doing? He said, I just need your help with something. So we start walking towards the battalion COC, and I didn't have an 8-point cover or anything. I just gotten out of the turret and taken my armor off and my PPE and all that. And we get to battalion FOB, bypass the main corridor, the main entry, and then get to the battalion chaplain's office. And I found out that he was killed in an explosion without any details to follow immediately. Later, we would find out that it was a suicide bombing attack that occurred in FOB Chapman, Coast Province, December 30th, 2009. It was one of the deadliest days in the history of the Central Intelligence Agency. And he was one of the 7 CIA officers that was honored with a star on the wall at Langley.
And first of all, I know everybody watching is sorry about what happened that day. I wanted to share with everyone the reason I got up a second ago. I hope you can see it on here, but when Beau mentioned Jeremy's star in the CIA memorial wall, the reason we were a few minutes late, and I apologize for that, was today we were at the CIA at Langley, who generously, hosted Beau so he could see his brother's star on the wall for the first time. And it was obviously a very powerful moment. And we'll post this picture on the 3 Wise Men Facebook page as well. But it was Beau, how did that feel to finally see the star after all these years?
I don't have words for it. It was unbelievable. And if anybody happens to be watching from GRS Langley, thank you so much to everyone involved in the, yes, to be able just to see Jeremy's memory preserved is absolutely, more than enough reward for me for all of this. So
Absolutely. So after Jeremy was killed, you and Ben came back for his memorial service. Then you both went back to Afghanistan, went back to war. And then, we're jumping through a lot of time in between, but you had 2 more deployments. Ben had several with his Green Beret team, ODA 1316. And it was just over 2 years later that they were in some very heavy fighting in Afghanistan's Balkh province. You were home from your deployment by then, and you were still, of course, all of you grieving the loss of Jeremy. And then late 2011, early 2012, another tragedy occurs. Do you want to tell us about January 9th, 2012?
So Ben's task force was in Balkh province, Afghanistan, and it was a pretty complicated mission, as I understood the layout geographically and everything else. Long story short, there's mountains or hills over here and the city right here next to it, and there's Taliban in both, and they had to clear them out both simultaneously while they're taking fire from the mountains. So Ben had the task of taking his Afghan commandos that worked for him up to the hills and start clearing out caves one by one. And in short, he saved the lives of women and children that were hiding in the cave network and got them out of harm's way as swiftly and safely as he could. And as he was breaching the next cave, he took, unfortunately, 8 to 10 rounds that traveled south to north through the legs and groin. And he was a fighter. He fought for 6 more days and eventually succumbed to his wounds in January 15th, 2012 in Landstuhl, Germany. And somehow, miraculously, he survived the flight.
It's pain that almost nobody can imagine. And, we're obviously glossing over some of the incredible things. You mentioned, of course, that Ben saved women and children. Jeremy saved many lives as well. And if you read 3 Wise Men, I think you'll be astonished, as we were during the research process, to find, how much combat and how kinetic their deployments were and how dangerous it was, not just for them, but their brothers and sisters in arms who were so generous in helping us research this book. This book would not have been possible without their help. And we appreciate them so much and their service to our country, of course. So, Beau, you were Ben's guardian angel, as they say, on that sad flight home from Germany to Dover, Delaware. You're back in Dover for, again, after only just over 2 years. It must have felt like a bad dream. But so during the emotion of that night, somebody arrived at the base who you were not expecting. Can you tell us what happened, who that was, and what happened next?
Right. So when I stayed in Germany, with Ben's remains and a fellow Green Beret, we stayed and we waited for the postmortem autopsy. The family went home. So the family was in Dover, waiting at Dover Air Force Base. And then Shane and myself, and then eventually Trevor, 2 Green Berets that worked with Ben, escorted Ben back to Dover. And once we got there, shortly thereafter, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General James Amos at the time, walked in shortly after and got down on one knee and told my mother that said he's not going anywhere for a very, very long time. So that was a little devastating for me. I enjoyed my time in the Marine Corps. I didn't know what that meant right off the bat. I was scared that it meant that I was getting kicked out. I didn't know. But fortunately, I was allowed to stay and continue to serve, just not to the capacity that I was before. I was allowed to keep my MOS, but I wasn't allowed to be in a deployable infantry unit. So I was a restricted infantryman, I guess you could say.
And you weren't happy about that at first?
At first, no, I was not, man. I mean, I get it now. I would probably, left to my own devices, have done something stupid, like try to go immediately back to a victor unit and find a deployment. But that's not a good thing to do in a state of grief like that. It never is.
Absolutely. So, again, the sole survivor status, much is made of it. There's obviously a very famous movie named Saving Private Ryan that deals with the sole survivor status. Obviously, it seems to me, as we've been talking and working together, that you would have rather gone back. But just, can you expand for a moment on what you were saying about that you understand now what the commandant tried to do?
Well, at the time, I mean, my first deployment, I was honest. Better than anyone. I was very vulnerable. Allowed myself to, be human in the book. So we exposed my, Jeremy's, Ben's, and myself, successes and failures, shortcomings, things of that nature. I didn't respond to grief well. And in first deployment, I was a bachelor. I wasn't. So I took risk like a bachelor. You know what I mean? And it was just, it was dangerous the way that I think at one point in time, my Marines were generally concerned for, my mental health and other things. And, just didn't want me to get, myself hurt or them hurt or anything like that. So, I had, 30 brothers just constantly looking out for me in Afghanistan. And then finally I got married, but, I never deployed as a father. And being a father now has kind of helped give me that perspective of knowing why General Amos did it. He and Secretary Panetta or Secretary Panetta. And being a father now, I can probably say that if I was in their situation, I'd do the same thing.
So one more tough question. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You had some rough times, understandably, after these tragedies. And, what is your message for other veterans?
I'd like to tell, not just veterans, but the family members of veterans, get your veteran to talk, and don't be offended if they don't want to talk to you. Steel sharpens steel, and just getting them. We have more resources now than we've ever had. And of course, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it used to be, especially, when, from 9/11 to now. And looking out for each other, and this stigma of not wanting to be able to talk about pain, because nobody wants to be the guy to drop out of a hike, right? Whether you're legitimately injured or not, you don't want to do it. And I think that we equate that to mental health, and that is really terribly wrong. And we're starting to identify it. We're starting to do a lot better. So veterans, look left, look right, look for that change in the baseline, and family members, get your vets to talk.
Why is this book called Three Wise Men? It seems obvious, but there's actually more behind it.
It's named, my father passed away for a few years ago, and in the wake of Parkinson's disease. But I wrote it for we wrote it for a lot of different reasons. But the three men that inspired me to be the man that I don't know if I am today, but hopefully just one day at a time, get better and better. And the three men that I aspire to, my father and my brothers.
So Jeremy, Ben, and Gene Wise, Dr. Gene Wise. It's phenomenal. And of course, I think a question a lot of people would like to have answered: how is your mom doing?
You can't shake her faith. She's doing. She's recovering from a stroke, and we've had to go back to the basics on some things as far as walking again, but she's just so powerful and heart of gold. And she's, things considered, she's doing very well, and try and hopefully get her to Oklahoma so she can do some grandbabies soon. And it's more grandbabies than just what's in Arkansas. So.
Definitely. We've been talking, of course, about Memorial Day, and something that, in my conversations with you and your family members and other Gold Star families that I've had the honor of working with is, the selfless nature of these fallen heroes, and of course, veterans and service members who are over there risking their lives right now. So in the spirit of Memorial Day, I asked this question: if Ben and or Jeremy had the chance to go over there again, even knowing what the outcome would be, do you think they would do it?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Better than anyone on this earth how many Green Berets and SEALs that we've talked to, and people that work for the Central Intelligence Agency that said that I would not be here if it weren't for Jeremy or if it weren't for Ben. So knowing the impact that they've made as the patriots that they are and remain today, I can tell you confidently, I believe they would do it again.
Well said, Beau, and thank you for your service and the tremendous burden that your family has shouldered since 9/11. And I think everyone out there is going to be thinking of you over Memorial Day weekend and beyond. And I hope that, this presentation and the Three Wise Men book, if you have a chance to read it, we'd really appreciate it. Will help everyone remember what Memorial Day is really about. Of course, we want to enjoy the time with our families and friends, but maybe just pause and if you know a veteran or someone in the military community, make sure to thank them and check on them, see how they're doing, and just remember what Memorial Day is all about. I know, working on this story with Beau has really changed my perspective on it, and hopefully it will yours as well. And thanks so much for joining us. I believe we're going to take some questions now. Yes, thank you.
Hello, welcome. Okay, yes, let me pop open the Q&A, and to our audience, we'll have time if it's not too late to pop a question down at the bottom of your screen. There's Q&A and you can type it in there. You talked a little bit about your mom just now, but this question, this person asked, how did your parents react to all three boys enlisting? Did anyone try to dissuade you?
Yeah, sorry. So imagine a doctor with, one son in medical school, another son's pre-med, and the other one doesn't finish his basics. So yeah, there was a lot of discouragement, nothing bad, just, like, really, you can't just finish med school, at least you're there, so and there was a little bit of a fallout when Ben enlisted, because from my parents' perspective as well, it was like, don't do it impulsively, but me, the baby, I think I got the worst. She didn't feed me, and I remind her about that all the time, but it was a bluff, she said, "Mom, I'm hungry." I'm like, nope. Nope. So anything that she could to try and to keep at least one of her boys safe, the both of them. But once we were enlisted, I mean, they were so proud and so encouraging. It's just that natural fear that parents are going to possess. I think if I would have told them that I wanted to be anything other than infantry or something, they're just like, oh, here we go. So, but.
Okay. You also touched on how you felt. You briefly touched on how you felt when you were restricted infantry. So I didn't know, is there anything else you would like to add about when you heard that and how you reacted to it? You said initially you weren't pleased, but you eased into the idea that maybe this was the best thing for you. Anything you want to add?
Well, I didn't, I was confusion. I had no idea what you just said. You're not going anywhere for a long time. And eventually I understood, like, okay, maybe deployments aren't, but initially I wanted to go. I mean, I had no intentions of leaving the infantry. My wife and I had actually already discussed it. And while I was in Afghanistan on my second tour, we re-enlisted to SOI. So I was going to go, or School of Infantry. So I was going to go, the idea was to go teach heavy guns, give the wife, my wife, a break from, back to, from deployments, because that 3rd Marines was on at the time, a 7-month on and 7-month off, or 7-month on, 9-month off deployment cycle, excuse me. So it was, take a break, do an instructor job, which you've got to do at some point anyway, and then go back to the infantry and keep going, keep plugging away. So that was my intentions. I loved it. I particularly like 3rd Marines, and I like school and teaching, but so yeah, does that kind of answer the question? I didn't really know what the restrictions were, but because I was allowed to stay in some capacity, it kind of helped me along, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. This person asks, can you talk more about what you mean by you had a rough time after? I think that's how you phrased it. I had a rough time after both your brothers were gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was not making a lot of healthy habits. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was blocking out my wife, and really the only people that I could talk to, the only outlet that I had was veterans, particularly the guys in Ben's team, Jeremy's team, and my platoons in the Marine Corps. And so being, outside of that, taken away from those guys, or the thought of not being around them, because they were my only outlet. I didn't want to talk to my wife. I did, and I told her that I don't want you to know, I probably convinced myself that I was doing her some kind of favors. And
trying to shield her from it.
Yeah. Well, to shield her and, be the tough guy. Again, that stigma of not wanting to admit you have pain. You know what I mean? So we're, talking to Tom and doing the book has been one of the cathartic things. Journaling helped me. That was a little bit of an outlet. And now, diving back into my marriage and then adopting children, which has been one of the most rewarding things in the history of. So my therapists are 2 and 4 years old. So yeah, I would say, not having those healthy habits and not doing the right things, if that answers your question, I hope.
I think so. It was great. Thank you both so much. I'm sorry we were rushed, but you recovered gracefully, and I could go on listening. And I think I speak for everybody out there that we could go on listening to your story for longer. But that is the last question that I have. So unless there's something else you want to add, I think we can go ahead and close. We've got a comment here. Thank you for your service and for sharing your story. It's from Meryl Bloomrosen. So
thank you for your support.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Beau and Tom, thank you for joining us. Thank you everybody out there watching on Zoom. And we appreciate your time. Your patronage is what enables us to host events like these. So as a gentle reminder, I've dropped the link to the book in the chat that takes you directly to the Politics and Prose website. While you're there, check out our events page. We hope to see you at an event soon. In the meantime, stay well, everyone, and stay well read. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Politics and Prose.